some factors internal to the BJP RSS ecosystem, that this government, which has come to power on June 4, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, might not be as stable a government as the NDA 1, NDA 2 under Prime Minister Modi since 2014, or NDA 2 and NDA 3 under Prime Minister Narendra Modi between 2014 and 2024. And the most important aspect of that talk in the echo chamber is that because the numbers have reduced from 303 in 2019 to 240 now, the BJP, because it does not have a majority of its own, is dependent on allies, and that too very mercurial ones, Nitish Kumar and N. Chandrababu Naidu. And this echo chamber and ecosystem is pushing a narrative that because Prime Minister Narendra Modi has never before this worked in a government or headed a government which did not have a complete majority of its own, so he might find it difficult to run this government. Now let's understand what are the facts and how it's going to pan out from someone who has worked very closely with the Prime Minister for the last 10 years and more. With us, Mr. Nripendra Misra, former Principal Secretary to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and after relinquishing that charge, now in charge of the Ram Temple construction as head of the committee. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So you understood through my opening, what is being talked about, and you have, of course, yourself seen this panning out over the last few days. Let's start by understanding, since you have worked so closely with the Prime Minister, is it a stable government or not?
Your observation doesn't come as a surprise to me because one is reading a lot in the newspapers, and also it is subject matter of discussion, debate in the channel. Let us first see what is the difference which has happened between the first two Modi governments of 5 years and the third government. I would say that yes, it is true that the party had majority, but there were other partners in the government. Nitish ji, you mentioned, he is a very, very old, able partner with BJP in the state as well as in the center. So there is some kind of working experience and a relationship which is already, it was there, it was experienced, and it is going to be there. In any such system, while you can theoretically work out the numbers and come to a decision, but the fact remains that it is the human relationship. It is what kind of a touch that the Prime Minister conveys, what kind of confidence that the Prime Minister conveys, which is important. So with these remarks, I would say that both Nitish ji and Naidu ji, I recall very well, I had occasion to have quite a few meetings with Sri Naidu during the period of 2014 and afterwards. He was always interested in development. Whenever he called me, he talked only about the projects, and he wanted some speed to be given for their clearance or for implementation. So I would say that if the purpose is the same, if the objective is nation building, and I was so happy to hear a comment coming from Sri Naidu that this is the best time that we have got, the best leader that we have got who can take the country forward. So with that kind of observation and also the kind of relationship Nitish Babu has with the Prime Minister, I am quite confident that the next 5 years would be a very constructive period where interaction would be possible. Some kind of a dialogue would continuously exist between the coalition parties, particularly the important partners, and the ruling party. So, stability point of view, my confidence is that it is a government which will carry its program. It is a government which will last for 5 years.
And you're saying this because, according to you, in the case of N. Chandrababu Naidu, so in the case of Nitish Kumar, as also, of course, in the case of Prime Minister, the single-minded focus on development agenda is something which sort of brings them together.
This is what I meant really, that there are no other issues. After all, if Bihar develops, the country develops.
Right.
If the problems of Andhra in terms of its financial deficit, that gets resolved, then it is something which the country also takes the message in other states. So I am just giving these examples because they are the burning issues of the two states.
Right.
But the fact remains that the two leaders, they may be governing the state, but they are national leaders. They have a national view, and it will be possible for the Prime Minister, who obviously is committed, who is committed to deliver, and who is committed to take a much higher trajectory in this next 5 years as far as the country development is concerned. There should be a very healthy working relationship.
Right. So, but I will still elaborate on the point I made, that while N. Chandrababu Naidu is a veteran of coalition politics, going back to the 1990s, so is Nitish Kumar. In the case of Narendra Modi, this ecosystem, which is now shooting from the shoulders of RSS, says that, Narendra Modi does not know coalition politics. He, as Chief Minister, as also Prime Minister, has always had a complete majority governments. So it might be difficult for Narendra Modi to adjust.
His political career should not be read or should not be measured from the point of view of only when he was in the government. He has a long span of political career. He was in the organization. And I recall that in one of the discussions, when it came to observing the coalition dharma, he mentioned that he already has a very constructive experience, a very living experience of bringing together the point of views and the parties. He in fact mentioned in that conversation that it was during emergency that he first learned the art of working together with different parties having different ideologies and views. And he mentioned that those days most of the political parties and their important leaders particularly, they were opposed to the then ruling dispensation. And quite a few leaders were in jail. So the problem was, how do you communicate in order to have a common, let us say, agenda for opposing the government of the day.
Right.
And Mr. Modi was one of the very active participants in working out that agenda. And mind you, the range was, he mentioned that the spectrum on which he was working was from Jamiat-e-Islami to Morarji Desai to people like Chandrasekhar, who were eminent and opposing. So the whole emergency period, when the agitation was being planned, Mr. Modi was very active.
Right.
He also mentioned then that the Congress government in Gujarat was there, and he was then looking after the organization of BJP. And often he will get a message either through the bureaucratic dispensation or through some political leader about carrying certain program in the interest of the state, and the message that the BJP should also come around. And it was he who was instrumental in convincing everyone that the interest of the state is supreme,
Right.
not the other things come number two.
Right.
And he was able to convince the BJP leadership that they must work together with the ruling party.
Right.
So like that, his experience has not been just of a majority government, but I would say, and he was very confident when he was talking about this,
Right.
that perhaps in terms of running governments with the different shades of opinion of political parties, he is able to do so because he has a single program, and that is development.
Right.
He has no other program to pursue.
Right.
So as long as the nation's progress, nation's development is concerned, perhaps there will be a greater, let us say, convergence and not divergence.
So essentially what you're saying is that a Prime Minister has experience of, during his days of political activism before he went into executive, of communicating, coordinating between a broad spectrum of political, ideological opponents and bringing them together. I think there is another example of late 1990s, I believe, when as General Secretary in charge of Haryana, he coordinated the coalition government actually between the Haryana Vikas
Oh,
Party,
exactly, that's right.
led by Bansi Lal.
Yeah, and he was very actively then, because he was then also looking after the northern states.
Right. Right.
As part of the organizational responsibility given to him.
Right.
And he was very, very active almost, and the people trusted him.
Right.
That he would ensure that the government works smoothly. So during that period, though not visible on the conference, in the conference room, but in the back room, it was he who was bringing out the convergence of views.
Right. So behind the scenes, he has ably handled coalitions and differing ideological positions to bring parties together. That's the import. Also, I believe during the NDA one of Atal Bihari Vajpayee with the likes of Mulayam Singh Yadav, one interesting observation in Narendra Modi's governance of the last 10 years has been the manner in which he has, despite the divide and despite the confidence of complete majority, he has taken the opposition along. So for example, the Bharat Ratnas announced recently to leaders from the opposition space, late P.V. Narasimha Rao, late Karpuri Thakur, or for that matter, even in his contemporaries, to be giving Padma Vibhushan to the likes of Sharad Pawar and Mulayam Singh Yadav. So obviously he has this thing in him to rise above politics and be statesmanly when it comes to engaging with the political opponents.
You mentioned very well, and I recall the days when the Padma Awards were getting finalized, or even the Bharat Ratna, which was getting finalized during my period. Very often the bureaucracy was confined to mostly Padma Shri. But the list of Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan and Bharat Ratna, the Prime Minister took a lot of interest. Right. He also took interest in Padma Shri, but he was, in a way I could say, when I'm using the word interest, he was almost proposing the names.
Right.
And I recall the time when he proposed straight away that please include in Padma Vibhushan Sharad Pawar ji.
Right.
For a second we were little surprised.
Right.
But without even waiting for any observation from our side, he, I recall at that point of time, said that Padma Award is a national award.
Right.
And anybody who has contributed to the national development or to the vision or to the democracy in particular, then that award must go to that person, irrespective of his party affiliation. And later you could see, when he recognized Mulayam Singh ji. I have worked under Mulayam Singh ji. I have a lot of respect for him. And when Bharat Ratna came to him from the present Prime Minister, I was surprised in a way that he had recognized the opposition, and one of the important opposition in Uttar Pradesh. But at the same time, I was happy that he has delivered the same message which he had taught during the period I was working there.
Right. Amazing. So, a very direct charge is being made of some kind of arrogance in governance. And I find it interesting, Mr. Misra, that if you look at the recent government formation, so you have a Shivraj Singh Chauhan, about whom there was this perception being created during the state elections of Madhya Pradesh that maybe he's being targeted, but now he's part of the union cabinet and very important heavyweight two portfolios, and portfolios which Shivraj Singh Chauhan perhaps really likes. Also, there is a pattern emerging of a generational shift. So someone like a Bansuri Swaraj getting a ticket and becoming a member of parliament, and this was also, remember, talked that maybe Prime Minister and Sushma Swaraj ji are not in the best of terms, and yet to be giving a ticket to her daughter. So I think there is a lot of thought that has gone into these decisions, be it Mr. Gadkari being part of the cabinet, continuing with the same portfolios, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, Bansuri Swaraj, the generational shift being effected in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. So obviously there is a lot of thinking going into for the grooming of the next generation of leadership, and not essentially, this is not about arrogance or, looking at contemporaries in a certain manner, but about thinking of the organization and its future.
I should not really be commenting on the individuals, because that is something which is the pure domain of, let us say, a political decision-making process. But I would first say that anybody, who even nurses the impression of any degree of arrogance in the Prime Minister, I experienced in cabinet meetings, for example.
How has been your experience?
Everyone was allowed to speak, and it may get delayed. The decision making may not take place the same day, but nobody was asked to curtail his observations. And there were many occasions, not one, many occasions, when the proposal came, a senior minister observed certain reservation, and the Prime Minister immediately deferred that item. The item was never pressed for decision making. It was deferred, and the bureaucracy was told to work more, to do the homework properly, and go and understand the point of view of the senior concerned minister before returning the proposal back to the cabinet.
So contrary to the perception which is being peddled that there is a lot of centralizing tendency, you are actually saying that it's a very democratic setup where in the cabinet meeting everyone speaks, and till the time they complete, the meeting can be delayed, and then those suggestions or elements are even incorporated.
Everyone was allowed. There was never a question of a senior minister and a junior minister. Each person in the cabinet was free to speak on the subjects. It was not necessarily confined to the portfolio that one was holding. If there is one impression which I got in the 5 years, 6 years that I served under him, the impression was he values experience. He wants to build up the next generation, so the younger ministers were always encouraged to speak and take the new responsibility. And the last one, and the most important one, Prime Minister never has, and this is he mentioned to me, he never has got one single target for a personality. He has a certain plan. So if, let us say, the role of any particular personality comes to an end at a particular point, don't be surprised if after 6 months or after a year, that person again emerges on some very important position. And during this period, there is kind of apprenticeship which goes on. So this team building process and utilizing the talent of everybody, that capacity building is inherent in him.
Right.
So, I mean, you mentioned some personalities, but let me assure you, he has in mind to utilize every possible worker of the party and even the coalition in this running of the government.
Amazing. So what you're saying is that if someone is out, that does not mean the person is out. Maybe there is another role getting assigned or would get assigned.
Exactly.
Right. So there is a plan.
Exactly.
To every decision.
Yes. I was invited for a farewell tea when I was leaving the Prime Minister's office. And I got up and I said, "Thank you, sir." And his only remark was, "Mr. Misra, in my relationship, be it political or sarkari," and sarkari he meant bureaucracy, "there is never a last word. I utilize the person up to a point he is interested in working. So he will be utilized, so don't think you will not be utilized."
Did you get an inkling then that you would be made the head of the construction committee for Ram Temple?
The judgment had not come by then. So there was no question of my becoming chairman construction committee. But he was very clear that he would perhaps, not in a structured system, but he would utilize my experience in some manner. And it did come about.
Before I move on to my last question, this one bit, because you mentioned cabinet meetings, I've heard that Prime Minister actually is a great listener to the extent that in meetings, he can sit and just listen for hours together. Is it true?
Oh yes, be it one-to-one meetings or meeting of the officers, where perhaps most of us would respect the seniority and would only expect the senior people to make the presentation. If the Prime Minister saw that somebody is giving a message, some kind of a, indication that he or she wishes to speak, Prime Minister himself would ask, "I understand you have a point of view and you have not spoken yet. What is it that you wish to speak?" Right. And he never cut short anybody. Right. That was also true for one-to-one his meetings. It was very true in the cabinet meetings. Right. In the cabinet meetings, there were ministers of state, independent charge, and they made presentations, and they often would read from a prepared statement to present the point of view. Prime Minister never cut short them just because he was reading or she was reading. So I will be very surprised if someone says that he was running a very highly centralized government then. I can speak for my period and say so.
Right. So that brings me to where we began, the coalition government. The government is in place. Interesting that almost all the top ministries, except for the shuffle that was needed because of vacancies and to accommodate the seniors, the entire top cabinet is continuation of Modi 1.0 and Modi 2.0. Also interestingly, the most of the team in the Prime Minister's office, the officers, the Principal Secretary, the National Security Advisor, everyone continues. So in a way there is a message of continuity in letting the same people be and take it on from here onwards. What message you get from this continuity?
The first thing, of course, is the program and then the person. The message which was very clear from the day one was that he had a vision of 100 days, he had a longer term vision, and he would never ever compromise with that vision in spite of slightly different shade of the cabinet which is now there today. I mean, you call it coalition government. But there was never any doubt that his program of 100 days will be the program of the government. The issue of continuity, yes. You mentioned about...
So he sort of wants to hit the ground.
Yeah, senior cabinet minister. That, of course, cabinet formation, I do not have to comment, it's his privilege. But I would definitely say that the message to the bureaucracy would be that the government would start working from day one.
Right.
There is not going to be any pause and there is not going to be any doubt about the implementation. One of the strengths of the Prime Minister is that the schemes are implemented. They hit the ground, they show up on the ground, and I am confident that the present next 5 years will also have the same character.
Right. As the Prime Minister said on the day of his victory, on the day of results, that while you need numbers to form the government, you need sarvamat to run the government. So in a way that was indication enough that he is going to be adept at handling coalition and consensus. On that note, thank you so much, sir, for joining us and enlightening us with this.
You see, this, let me conclude also. You used a very good word, sarvamat. There have been occasions when he went to the nation. He spoke as a national leader, and through that process he sought the support of everybody who is interested and who is a citizen of the country, be it of any political party. So it is not only that he would be seeking cooperation of the people who are in government, but he would, as he has been doing it, perhaps be going out to seek cooperation of other parties in getting his agenda through.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. You know, so far as the doubts in the mind of the echo chamber or certain echo chamber are concerned, hopefully this conversation would puncture those doubts. And so far as the larger ecosystem is concerned, remember, they said that Modi could run Gujarat, but India is not Gujarat. And for 10 years, Narendra Modi was Prime Minister and continues to be so. Thank you so much for that.
Same was true about the foreign affairs.
Right.
When he held the first meeting of the senior officers of the foreign ministry, the first impression was he has never handled foreign affairs.
Yes.
He must be first taught what is all there.
Yes.
But believe me, he had a point of view, he had a vision of foreign relationship, and he was, while he would listen to the bureaucracy of the ministry, he was never ever controlled by bureaucracy in forming of his foreign policy.
And that perhaps has turned out to be his most successful aspect of his government.
This is exactly why I want to point it out. He, in fact, smiled when the impression was given in first 2 or 3 meetings that, Mr. Prime Minister, this is a new thing you have not yet handled, and we will tell you, and then you can decide later. But he could decide what was his priority and convey to the bureaucracy that this is the priority which you have to implement.
Thank you so much.
You.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for the conversation.
चल हो जा शुरू
केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ रे दिल झूमे देखो पतवारा हुआ रे दिल झूमे देखो पतवारा हुआ रे
हर पल मनाओ केसरी त्योहार विमल बोलो जुबान केसरी
The Republic Business Emerging Technology Awards is coming up soon, and here are your reasons for participating in the mega event. First, an opportunity for a massive exposure on the Republic Digital Network. Second, authentic insights into your business from decision makers and thought leaders in the digital space. And third, an opportunity to network and drive impact. If you're keen to participate, we're keen on having you on board on the basis of 3 conditions. First, second, and third. See you at Arbiter 2024.
From Asia's largest news headquarters, setting the agenda for Bharat. You're watching Republic.
News at 6. I'm Suesha Saman. Through the next half an hour, we have you covered on all that has been making news across the Republic this Saturday evening. First, a quick check of the headlines.
American Pistachio presents cracking news of the hour.
Delhi LG VK Saxena sanctioned prosecution against author Arundhati Roy in 2010 anti-India speech. Roy to be tried under sections of UAPA. National capital faces water crisis while the political face-off escalates between AAP government and the opposition over inaction. Both BJP and Congress staged protests. Trouble peaks for former Karnataka Chief Minister B.S. Yediyurappa in the POCSO case. Senior BJP leader is back in Bengaluru after going incommunicado. Demolition drive begins in Andhra Pradesh. Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation, that is GHMC, has demolished an unauthorized construction near former Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy's residence. And first we get you breaking news coming in. This is in connection to the Rudraprayag accident where the death toll has mounted to 12 now. Unfortunate that 12 people have lost their lives while the others who suffer injuries were moved to AIIMS Rishikesh. Those pictures that we got you a short while ago of the injured who are in a critical condition. And unfortunately, the death toll has mounted to 12. Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami, who also met with the injured at the hospital, he condoled the deaths and he also went on to say that all possible assistance was being given out to the families of the deceased and those who are injured. He's also announced an ex gratia of 2 lakh rupees for the kin of victims. Those are the pictures on your screens as Uttarakhand Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami is now at the hospital as he is meeting with the injured. Remember, the police had issued a statement that evacuation process was underway, and while those victims were being rescued, they had provided immediate assistance and all possible help that was being extended. Let's try and listen into this reaction.
यहाँ पर जो है जो ज़रूरी है सबको इलाज मिल रहा है और उनके परिवार के लोगों को भी जो है अभी सूचना की जा रही है उनकी जानकारी करके, और जैसे मिल जाएगा आगे का इलाज उनका अच्छा हो उसके लिए सारे समुचित प्रबंध यहाँ अस्पताल प्रबंधन ने किए हैं और हम लोग कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि जल्दी से दुर्घटना में लापरवाही सामने पाई तो कोई कार्रवाई होगी उसकी जांच के आदेश देंगे।
सर टीम का क्या है, कितनी टीम इनकी देखने की सुरक्षा में है उपचार में? उपचार टीम बनाई गई है कोई?
नहीं अच्छा उपचार यहाँ पर अभी जो भी उपचार के लिए ज़रूरी है यहाँ पर सभी डॉक्टरों की टीम और सब काम कर रही है।